joint to tape. This is because it is bones that are supported by ligaments, but it is a very injury-prone joint. So oftentimes people who have shoulder problems will have had them for a long time. It has muscles that cross at all different angles. As you can see from the picture here, there are several different muscles. It has very hard contours that make tape sticking to the joint very difficult. You then add the fact of sport participation and people getting sweaty on top of that, and it makes it difficult to make the tape stay. And of course, the rigors of sport entail that people want full shoulder movement, but they also want to protect the shoulder at the same time. So all of these things make it very difficult to tape the shoulder. Now, there are a few things that can be done. There are some very effective shoulder braces for both people who've had dislocations and people who have rotator cuff problems. They're generally designed to allow a certain degree of movement, but also protect the athlete from areas they shouldn't be getting into. And they don't fall off from sweaty skin. They can generally be adjusted. There are also some kinesiotaping or K-taping strategies that work well. Generally, a medical person, a physiotherapist, a chiropractor, somebody should have done a K-taping technique on the athlete's shoulder and shown them how to do that and given them the correct supplies in order to do that, in order to be taping the shoulder. But for our presentation here, we're going to look at taping that can be done for an AC sprain. So that's an acromioclavicular sprain. It's also called a shoulder separation. We're also going to do one for long head of biceps tightness or strain and for rotator cuff strain. So the basis of taping the shoulder and the position. The shoulder can get very sweaty with activity, so it's best to use a product like Tough Skin, something that makes the skin stickier and tacky so that the tape will stick as much as possible. We want to keep the shoulder in anatomical position. So anatomical position is the picture here. You want the arm straight down at the side of the body, and you want the shoulder blades to be relaxed. Okay? And we're going to apply tape to the skin and use tighter sports bras or sport shirts to help hold the tape on and attach longer. So what we want is the tape right on the skin, and then we're going to put their clothing over top to try and hold everything in place. So the first thing we're going to do is tape the AC joint. Now the AC joint is shown right here. Okay, this is the joint of the clavicle meeting the acromion or the shoulder blade. Okay. Now this joint is damaged when someone falls and their arm is out straight to the side or falls straight on the shoulder itself. And they can either sprain this joint, okay, so they're going to get a laxity in the two bones being held together, or they can separate this joint, which means that they'll end up having the clavicle sticking up. Okay. Anybody you've ever seen who has a bump on the top of their shoulder, that's the injury they've probably sustained. So how we're going to do this is try and use the tape to actually hold that clavicle, the collarbone, down in place, okay? So what we're going to do to start with is we're actually going to tape our anchors. Just like we've done with some of our other tape jobs, we need anchors so that the tape will stick. Our first anchor is going to be right around the torso, just below nipple line. Now, the one thing that's very important with this is that you make sure that the person takes not a hugely deep breath, but a regular tight breath so that the tape is not so tight that they can't breathe. Once we've done that anchor, we're then going to use these strips that go up and over top of the AC joint, tacking them down to that anchor on the front and on the back in order to provide some stability to the clavicle. Okay? We're going to do 3 to 5 strips like that. And then we're going to re-tape that anchor around the torso to hold those tape pieces in place. So I'm going to walk you through this with a video. Okay. So we have the person sitting nice and relaxed, shoulder blades down, arm at the side. Now we're not using Pro Wrap here. The tape is going directly on the skin. So again, it's going all the way around the body. Okay. We're below nipple line. Make sure that they take a breath so that it's not too tight, okay? But the name of the game here is to try and keep it still. So we want that joint, and we're going to tape in like a fan, going across the body from the anchor at the front to the anchor at the back, Again, we're aiming for right on top of the shoulder there. You can fan these out a bit so that they're protecting that joint as much as possible. Putting some good tension so you hold everything down. And then again, you want that anchor at the end to come around and hold those pieces of tape in place, making sure this isn't too tight so the person can breathe. Okay? And this is your AC tape job. So the next one we're going to do is the long head of biceps. So the long head of biceps runs on the very front of the arm. Okay, so this is on the palm side of your arm. And long head of biceps is a site where the muscle gets quite tight in the very front of your shoulder. This is usually caused by a lot of overhead activity. So you can think of volleyball swinging. You could also think of backstroke, or even somebody who just works with their arms over their head quite a lot. It's an easy muscle to stretch, but not something that most people do very often. They will either just have pain in the front of their shoulder or even a burning sensation. So it'll be quite tender to the touch. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our elastic tape to actually help support this muscle. So we're not trying to limit its ability to work. We're just trying to actually help it do its job. So we're going to use the white athletic tape for our anchors. We're going to have one anchor at the upper arm. This is going to be close to the elbow, okay? But we want all of the tape above the joint line of the elbow. So when they bend their elbow, we want to make sure that all of our tape is above that crease at the front of the elbow. We'd also like them to make a little bit of a muscle in the upper arm so that these strips that come around are not too tight, okay? The second anchor is going to go on the front of the shoulder. It's similar to the strips we just did with the AC joint, but it's just going to come over the front of the shoulder so we have somewhere to stick the tape down that's coming across the front of the arm. Okay? Now we're going to use elastic strips of tape. They're going to start down here at the elbow. We're going to pull 50% of the stretch out and we're going to stick them to the anchor at the top. Okay? We're going to do probably 2 or 3, depending on the amount of support that that muscle is going to need. When we're done that, we're going to reapply our anchor strips. So we're going to put our strips on the bottom to cover the tape and the strips on the top to cover the tape as well. Now this is a difficult tape job to make stay attached. And so you might need their clothing to help secure the tape. So if they have a sports bra or a tight fitting shirt, you're going to want to put that on over top to make sure that you keep the tape in place as long as possible. Okay? Again, like the Achilles tendon tape job we did in the lower leg, this is meant to have the elastic tape help the muscle do its job. Okay? So we're going to walk through this, done live. So with this tape job, easiest to have the patient sitting with their arm resting on a table just to give you easier access. Again, we're using the white tape, and this is coming around their arm above the elbow joint. Okay, make sure it's not too tight. You can get them to make a muscle to make sure that it is comfortable. Our second anchor is up on the shoulder. This is above the shoulder. And this is so that we can attach the elastic tape. We're going to use that elastic tape, pull 50% of the stretch out from the bottom anchor up to the top anchor. We're going to do 2 to 3 strips. We're going right over top of where you would find that long head of biceps muscle. Once you have those, you're going to reapply your anchors. So the anchor at the top and the anchors at the bottom. Okay, make sure that your tape is not too tight. And that's holding that in place. Now the last tape job is for rotator cuff taping, and this will look fairly similar to the one we just did with the long head of biceps. So most people have heard of the rotator cuff muscles. These are located on the back of your shoulder. So these are on the shoulder blade, and they run from the shoulder blade out to the humerus, the upper arm bone. They help stabilize the shoulder, and they help rotate the arm outwards. Okay? So injuries to these muscles cause a great deal of pain in the back of the shoulder, and they can also make the shoulder feel very uncomfortable doing any other movements. So as I said, this is going to be very similar to what you saw with the long-headed biceps taping, but it is on the back of the shoulder. So again, we're going to have anchors on the arm. Here they're going to be halfway up the upper arm. They're not down at the elbow. And we again have an anchor that's running on the shoulder blade so that it provides somewhere for us to stick the tape. We're going to use elastic tape, and we're going to run from the anchor on the arm up over top and back to attach onto the shoulder blade anchor. We're going to run 2 to 3 strips, and then we're going to reapply those anchors to hold everything in place. Again, just like with the long-headed biceps taping, you may need the athlete's clothing to help hold this in place, especially as they get sweaty. So here we have our athlete, same position as the long-headed biceps taping. We're going to put 2 anchors on their upper arm, again making sure that it's not too tight. You can have them make a muscle to ensure that you haven't done those to cut off their circulation. And we have one that's coming along the edge of their shoulder blade. Now we're going to switch to the elastic tape. Again, we're going to take 50% of the stretch out, and it's going to come across their body onto the arm. You'll notice here that the tape is actually wrapping around to be on the outside, and that's simply to give it more stability. We reapply the anchors. And just like with the other tape jobs we've done with elastic tape, the idea here is to actually have the elastic tape help the muscles do their job. So important notes with taping the shoulder. If the tape job is too tight, the person's going to feel like they're getting a cramp in the forearm or tingling in the fingers. Okay? Any of those things mean that your anchors on the arm are too tight and they need to be loosened. You can play with how many wraps you do and the strength of pull to create the best tape job for each person. So one might need 4 or 5 strips of elastic tape that have more stretch taken out of them. Others might just need 2 or 3. And again, ensure that your tape is removed when the activity is done, and don't sleep with the tape on, especially those anchors that go around the arm. That can create a huge problem for athletes.